Who's at the Table is an engaging show for the audience to hear the courageous stories of women veterans. Often, women veterans aren't asked to be in boardroom discussions, but we deserve to be at the table. Business leaders should want us there because we are innovators, creators, entrepreneurs, critical thinkers, mission-driven, and vital to their success.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Who's at the Table. My name is Teresa Jackson. I am the Chief Medical Executive of AMVETS. And this week, we have our final guest on this special edition of Who's at the Table Men's Edition. I'm so happy to have this veteran on this talk this week because, man, he and I have history and he's been doing some amazing, outstanding, inspirational things. And when I thought of this special edition show, I just knew I needed to have him on the show. So he is none other than Dr. Antonio Webb. Hey, Antonio, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Thank you for having me today.
You're so welcome. And, again, you and I have been deployed together in Iraq back in 2005. And I've seen the work that you've done. I see what you continue to do. And I'm just so proud of you and my colleagues that I talk to them about you all the time. They're like, man, who is this guy? And I just knew I had to reach out to you to have you on the show. We're all proud of you, Antonio. Our friends that we were deployed together in Iraq, we all talk about the great work you're doing. So I'm honored to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's get into your story and why you deserve to be here at the table. Tell us, why do you feel you deserve to be here at the table today?
Yeah, so I think I have a remarkable kind of journey to kind of get to the point where I'm at today. Starting in kind of Louisiana, just growing up. I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, where it was a city that was filled with poverty and gangs and violence, and including several family members who went to prison. Like my little sister went to prison, my brother went to prison, and ever since I've been young, my mom has been on and off drugs and in and out of jail her whole life. And she was actually shot and is paralyzed from her waist down due to her drug addiction. So, just coming from that type of environment to becoming a spine surgeon, I'm very humbled by it, but I'm also, it did take a lot to get to this point.
And tell us about that journey of knowing where you came from and deciding that the military was going to be in your path. I mean, you could have been one of those statistics there in Shreveport, but what happened that you chose the military as your path?
Yeah, very much so. Growing up, I started even getting in trouble and hanging out with the wrong crowd. And it was actually my father who's spent time in the military and retired. And then my older brother went into the Army. So I figured the best way for me to get out that type of environment and stay out of trouble and to have a way to pay for school was to join the military. So I joined the military at age 17 and did 8 years in the military. I did 6 active and 2 reserves. And that was kind of my ticket out of Shreveport and out of that environment. I'm pretty sure if I would have stayed around in that area and then did some of the things that my friends and family members were doing, I would have probably either be dead or in jail now. So I'm glad the military actually provided me a way out of that environment.
And in a way, it was actually kind of an act of surviving, past Shreveport by coming into the military. But why did you choose the Air Force? There's so many different branches. Why the Air Force?
Yeah, Air Force or Navy, I think, are the best branches. I'm a little biased. So when students contact me or people that are interested in the military, I always tell them, hey, look at the Air Force or Navy. They treat you the best.
Yeah.
So my father was in the Air Force, and he actually signed a waiver for me to join at age 17. So I actually joined middle of my senior year of high school and went to boot camp where my fellow classmates were still in class, and I came back and walked with my graduating class in high school in my military uniform. So he actually signed me a waiver and kind of instructed me that Air Force is probably the best, and my brother kind of agreed. He's Army, always out in the field and always deployed somewhere, and so Air Force was a really good choice for me.
And I don't know if you and I ever talked about this, but I had a similar path. I actually came into the military at 17 as well. My parents had to sign for me because, of course, I wasn't of age. I didn't walk in my uniform at graduations like you did, but yeah, I came in at 17. My parents had to sign for me and do the waiver. And again, it was the best decision. And I'm biased to the Air Force too. I coached, always coach my nieces and anyone that come to me to say, hey, either the Air Force or the Navy is the way to go. No offense to no other branches out there, but real little bias, Antonio.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And you were enlisted right before becoming an officer?
Yep.
How many total years did you serve?
Yeah, so I did 23.5 years and 14 days. So I did 11 years enlisted. So I came in rock bottom, E1, climbed all the way up on the enlisted side, and then crossed over. And I think for me, that was the best path. I did, of course, get accepted to the Air Force Academy, and there were some hiccups along the path for me to actually going to the Air Force Academy, and I chose the Air Force enlisted route as the next best thing. But I'm so happy that I did. I think either way, Air Force Academy or the enlisted route, I'm here now, and that's really all that matters. But I'm sure your brother probably gives you a lot of crap since you are Air Force and he's Army. How is that in the household?
Not too much trouble. He's still actually in. He's been in, I think, 20 years or so. He's a major in the Army. So the good thing about the Air Force, it allowed me to go to school. So my whole thing, I wanted to become a physician ever since a magnet program growing up in Shreveport. And I'm glad I was exposed to that program, and I actually go back to speak to that program a lot. But I wanted to go to school, and I'm pretty sure if I was in the Army, I'm not sure if I would have been able to go to school full time because, being in the Air Force, I was a medic and medical technician. So at nighttime, I would go to school or the weekends or internet courses, and I was going full time while I was on active duty. So being in the Air Force, afforded me that opportunity to obtain an education on active duty, which, positive thing, and they pay for 100% tuition if you're active duty. So,
and I think that's an added advantage. Any military branch, you just got to find what path you take in the branches to get the education piece that we so rightfully deserve. And so I'm glad that you did that. And that's how I became a nurse as well, Antonio. Again, I'm learning all this good stuff about us, that we have some similarities here. I stayed on active duty, and I went to nursing school in the daytime, and I worked for the military at night so that I could get my nursing degree. And then I was able to cross over. So again, tuition paid for. Was it tough? Heck yeah, having to have twin daughters and going to work for the military at night and then nursing school in the day. But, here we both are. That's what persistence and tenacity and just being consistent in our thoughts and being focused gets us here. So let's talk about your military career for a second before we get into where you are now. What was your military career like? I know you and I was in Iraq together, but where did you start and what was your transition like?
Yeah, so I went in at 17, and my job was a medical technician. So I wanted something in the medical field just because I knew I was going to try to get out and go to medical school eventually. But, the military actually set me up for success. And when people talk about, hey, what did you take away from your military time? It's, the leadership skills, the ability to learn different cultures and experience different things in the military just from traveling. The discipline, to be very successful in medical school. I learned those things in the military, but as a medical technician, I was working alongside nurses and physicians at the bedside, so I was able to gain that aspect and that experience. But the military for me was a way to make it out of Shreveport, also a way to serve my country. And, it was life-changing for me. I went in 17 just like you did and very young and, knucklehead, and it straightened me up really fast.
Yeah. And in the military, as a medic, one of the things that I saw when you and I were deployed together is that you were always hands-on. There were things that we as nurses, we were supposed to do, but we all saw something in you that said, this dude is really about learning, and you were always in in the trenches with us when there was codes and with the surgeons at the bedside? Was that always in you, or was that part of your plan to get as much knowledge as possible, knowing that you were going to pursue medical school?
Yeah, but probably a combination of both. I've always been kind of a driven, kind of curious person, and just being able to experience those things actually helps me even to this day. And I always tell people, the best officers I think are officers that have prior kind of enlisted experience. And same thing with physicians. The best physicians are those who have prior medical experience. So I'm no stranger to kind of hard work. And when nurses are kind of changing a patient or need to turn a patient, I'm there and I'm available and willing to help. Other physicians I've saw kind of going through the years, they just turn a cheek or look the other way. But I understand kind of what the nurses and what goes on at the bedside. So I think that makes for a really more well-rounded physician. But getting back to your original question, I think I've always kind of been that way.
And so talk to us about your journey to becoming a surgeon, because if anyone has followed your journey, it wasn't an easy one. I know you have had to take the MCAT several times. I know you probably have gotten several no's when you applied to medical school. Tell us about that and how you had to cope and get back on that horse again and keep trying over and over again.
Yeah, so, medical school, the entrance is pretty competitive. You have some really exceptional students that apply, really brilliant students that apply to medical school. So, coming out the military, I think trying to do my whole undergraduate degree kind of while I was active duty, working full time and having to drop classes. I think I went to maybe 4 colleges in total, just so I can get a class here, get a class there. Wow. So it kind of resulted in a disjointed college educational experience. Mm-hmm. But when I got out the military, I started applying to medical school, and it took me 3 years to get in. Every year, I got rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter, and took the medical entrance exam 3 times, and kind of struggled with that, and until I eventually got it. So I always tell people that if it would have took me 10 years to get into medical school, I would have applied every single year, because that's how bad I wanted to do it. And if you want to be something that bad, you'll eventually get it. You just have to keep trying. But having that military experience, discipline that allowed me to be very rigorous, kind of in my approach to it, set me up for success. So.
And so when you had those rejections, I mean, we all get rejected, and sometimes, rejected once, you'll be like, okay, I'll try again. You get rejected 2 times, you're like, oh man, maybe it's not for me. Did you ever go through that kind of thought process after the 3rd rejection? Oh my God, maybe, medical school isn't for me. Maybe I need to think of something else. What were you thinking throughout all of that?
Yeah, so, coming from Shreveport, with my kind of story, kind of grew up and, mom didn't go to college, only a high school diploma. My dad did some college. No one in my immediate family had graduated from college just yet, besides my older brother a little bit later. But I thought my military experience, along with my background, that would hold some weight with the medical schools, but it definitely did not. It looked at the kind of the whole picture, your scores, GPA, and all those things. But there were several times I was like, man, I'm not getting into school, and I had actually quit my job when I got out the military and was in the reserves. I worked as the LVN in the ICU at Lackland Air Force Base, and I quit that to study for the MCAT and just focus, just on my medical school application. And there were definitely times where I was like, I don't know if I should be keep applying after all these years. And I actually applied to PA school in the military 1 year after I didn't get in, and so there was also some veering off of the path, but I just stayed persistent with it and kept getting back straight on my goal to become a physician until I got in.
And so were there any challenges? I know for a lot of us who was deployed together, we came back, with some challenges of post-traumatic stress. And I know in your book, you talked about it very openly about some of the things that you had to deal with coming back from that deployment. What were some of those challenges that you had?
Yeah, so coming back, as most people who went overseas and deployed, coming back was pretty hard for me. I talk about it in my book where, I came back and, really aggressive. Before leaving to Iraq, I probably never got into a fight, but, coming back, I got in 6 or 7 fights.
Wow.
Trouble with sleeping at night and, loud noises. I couldn't go outside during the 4th of July because of all the fireworks and things like that. So it was really challenging, but at the same time, it was one of those things that most people would just keep quiet or not talk about it, because there was also this talk about promotion. Hey, you don't want this on your record. Other people, hey, you're going to medical school, you don't want this on your record. So I kept it quiet and really didn't talk about it and bottled it up until I got into an altercation, and which got me into some trouble, and had to go see someone about it. So it's as we'll probably talk about this, but my kind of advice is to not do the same thing I did. Talk about it. It's okay to have those feelings, and coming from an environment like that, you may have some hard time adjusting, which I felt like the military should have did a better job of preparing us for our arrival back into the U.S.
And do you think your PTSD was also a factor in probably, your success or some of the rejections you were getting as well? Was there a little PTSD in there as well?
No, I don't think so. There was one or a couple of schools that asked me about that particular incident that was on my record from, but I don't think so. I think it's mostly kind of my scores, as well as some other parts of the application they look at, like your GPA and things like that.
And so after that incident that you spoke about, and before we get any further, can you tell the viewers the name of your book? Because we keep referring to the book like everybody knows about it. What's the name of your book, and when did you publish it?
Yeah, so the book is called Overcoming the Odds: From the War on the Streets in Louisiana to War on Terrorism in Iraq, How I Overcame the Odds. I published it my intern year in 2014.
Very good. So when we make reference to that, viewers, that's what we're talking about. But, in doing that book and having to relive some of those challenges, Antonio, what were you thinking? Were you also kind of like afraid to disclose those things in the book and let people know, oh my God, he got rejected 3 times. Oh my goodness, he had PTSD and was in fights and all this other stuff. Were you scared of that, or was it something compelling you just to do it to help others?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. I did have some reservation about, putting information out there for the whole world to see. And I get emails and messages from people like all over the world saying how inspired kind of they are by my story. But I was also kind of compelled to just share my story, because there's a lot of other people out there that can kind of relate to growing up in an environment that I grew up in, and also having the same struggles. You see physicians or surgeons, and you just don't hear about kind of their struggles that they had. No one talks about the struggles. This path has been very challenging. I think I've taken maybe 14 8-hour, 9-hour exams, which, I'm not the best standardized test taker. And to become a surgeon, you got to take a lot of exams, and people just don't talk about the struggle. So I just wanted to chronicle kind of my story for someone who looks like me in an environment and whatever portion of the world that can use my story as inspiration and say, like, hey, if he did it, I can also. So.
And what has the feedback been like from your veteran counterparts?
Feedback has been pretty good. I have a lot of veterans that reach out to me and say, hey, I'm pre-med also, or I'm pre-dental or pre-health, or I want to start my own business. And, your story has really inspired me to keep going and, have that grit. So.
And so with that being said, how do you feel you've been coping with your PTSD? And do you find that you're still dealing with some things, even as you're going through being a surgeon and going through medical school? How do you feel you're coping?
Yeah, it's gotten better kind of over the years. It gets better, but, you do have those flashbacks and things that we saw kind of while we were there. But, it's gotten better. And I'm more kind of willing these days to kind of talk about it just because, it's in my book and I get asked a lot of questions about it. So I think there's a therapeutic side to that as well, just to have those conversations. I think that's extremely important, compared to when I first came back and 20 years old. I think I was, like 20 years old, and, not wanting to talk to anybody about it. So this is a vast kind of change from that.
And coincidentally, all of us were challenged with PTSD. We all kept quiet for the very reasons you said. We were in the medical field. I was an officer, you was enlisted. We all had promotions we were worried about. And we all were suffering in silence. We weren't even telling each other. And it was crazy that even when I came out, people were like, oh my goodness, Teresa, I was dealing with it as well. And, thanks for your bravery in coming out. And it seems like you got that same kind of feedback that people were saying, oh my goodness, it's about time some of us start talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important for, people like yourself to share your story. And, hey, I went through this also. It's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to seek out help. So, you touch, even if you touch one person, but, I'm pretty sure you've inspired and kind of helped thousands, of people just by sharing your story. So
knowing you had the Shreveport experience, that's where you grew up, you had your family experience, you had your experience with the military. What was it like when you got that acceptance letter? You got knocked down, you got nose, and you finally got that acceptance letter. What was that like?
Yeah, probably, one of the happiest days of my life. I remember what I was doing and where I was at. I had worked so hard to kind of get to that point, not realizing that was the probably the easiest part of this whole journey, just getting into medical school. But actually, getting through medical school and then getting into a really competitive specialty and excelling at that was probably more challenging, but that was probably one of the most happiest days of my life, just when I read that email and said congratulations, you've been accepted. But it's been an uphill battle ever since then, just to stay afloat. These a lot of physicians are brilliant. I always compare from college, you may have some smart people in college or, in high school, but, some people may be just there just because their parents make them. But in medical school, everyone's smart. So you're trying to compete with 200 other people, 300 other people that are just brilliant. That makes it really competitive. And you just have to work a little bit harder than everyone else.
So you thought getting in was hard, but then once you got in, you're like, oh my God, I still got some more uphill battles to climb. And so what kept you going? Because, again, it's hard to carry that cross of always, man, here we go again. I just got into medical school. Now I got to work even harder to stay here and compete. How did you carry that cross every single day?
Just been very persistent and, reminding myself why I chose this path in the first place. I started medical school in 2009, 11 years ago, and, I just finished my last month of training like 2 months ago. So, it's
11 years.
11 years after college. If you include college, it's 15 years. So, there's a lot of burnout, being a physician and, trying to do this for 10, 11 years, day after day, can be very tiring, but you just have to stay very persistent and remind yourself why you're doing this in the first place. So.
And I'm sure those are the words of encouragement that you give to anyone that emails you or when you're out here doing speaking engagement. And I think that's so important that you have to steady the course. You some days you may want to give up, but you're a true example of not giving up and where you can be when you decide to not give up. And I appreciate that. So why did you choose orthopedics? Well, I mean, out of all the specialties out there, why that?
Yeah, so orthopedics is actually one of the top competitive specialties. So if you once you graduate medical school or in your last year, you apply to whatever specialty that you want to go into. The top ones are neurosurgery, plastic surgery, orthopedics, and dermatology. Those are probably the most challenging specialties to get into. For me, I always liked working with my hands, kind of building things and breaking things down and putting things back together. And that's kind of the what orthopedic surgeons do, fix hip fractures or or total knee replacements or rotator cuff injuries. So I love the reconstructive part of it. And it's a very collegial specialty. And that's what I really loved about it also.
Nice. And if not orthopedic, what would have been your next option?
I thought about going into plastic surgery. Chose not to do that, but ENT. I thought about that, but I didn't want to be confined to this portion of the body. So
Yeah.
orthopedics, and we can work on foot and ankle, we can work on spine, shoulder and elbow, joint replacement. So there's a lot of different subspecialties that you can go into.
So let's talk about when you decided you wanted to write your book.
Mm-hmm.
Did that come on a whim, or as you said earlier, it was therapeutic for you to talk about PTSD and all your life story? Where did the book idea come from?
So it actually came from when I was interviewing for different residency spots at the end of medical school, coming from Louisiana. And then I was at these interviews. I was at Harvard, I was at Stanford, Cleveland Clinic, Baylor, these Northwestern, these very prestigious schools. And the surgeons were really impressed with my story. I was like, wow, I can't believe it. Tell me more. And they were really blown away by it. So, something clicked in me at that time. I was like, hey, these surgeons that are very, well-known and renowned surgeons at Harvard, that they're impressed by my story. I'm pretty sure a young kid in, a really rural area or really impoverished area could, use, my story as inspiration. So, and I was getting emails from students all over, all over at that time also. They were asking me some of the same kind of questions. So it clicked after those interviews. I was like, I should put this into a book so that I don't have to, people can actually pick it up and read it and, use it as inspiration. So that's kind of where it kind of first started, and kind of started off with the blog, and that kind of transitioned to YouTube. That's kind of where it first started.
And so what is it like going back? Because I know you go back a lot to Louisiana, and you do motivational speaking with the kids, and I've seen posts with you with children, and you go overseas as well. Are the rural kids kind of where you want to target the most because of your upbringing, or you have a special target of people that you want to inspire?
Yeah, I would say a kid who is from a similar environment as mine. Their family members may not have taken that educational kind of path, or they may not even think it's possible to become a physician, or even a surgeon. So those are the kids that I kind of try to target, just because I think it's important for young kids to see something. You can't become something if you can't see it. So I think representation is very important, and especially as a orthopedic surgeon, less than 1.5% of orthopedic surgeons in the U.S. are African American, and even less than that for spine surgeons. So if I would have had something like YouTube where I can just go online, wow, that's a Black doctor there, I want to be just like that. And he talks just like me. He wears Jordans. He listens to Lil Wayne on the way to work, and these things. So that's kind of my goal, and that's the impetus behind my YouTube channel as well, is to show kids and that it is possible. You can become something like that. I had never seen a Black doctor, never had met one when I was growing up. The people that I looked up to were the drug dealers and the dope boys and the rappers and NBA players. So that's what I was looking up to.
So what does that do to your heart when you go out and you do talk to that little kid that's never seen a Black doctor, never heard that a Black little boy can be a surgeon like you? What does that do to your heart when you come off stage and they run up to you and say, "Oh, Dr. Webb, I want to be just like you"? What does that do to your heart?
It feels really good. My little brother passed away when he was 21 from leukemia. And, when I'm giving talks, sometimes I see my little brother, or I see myself and the young kids. I can just wow, that little kid reminds me of my little brother, or he reminds me of myself when I was younger. He was very curious and driven and, very outspoken. And, it feels really good. And I believe that's why God placed me on this earth, is to inspire young kids to, or everyone out there, to inspire them to kind of reach whatever goals they set for themselves. I'm really blessed and humbled to kind of be in this position, and hopefully I can continue to inspire others to reach their goals as well.
I didn't know the statistic that you just stated. I mean, even that alone, I think, would put more pressure on anybody. Do you feel the pressure of being successful because of that statistic that you just quoted?
Yeah, I think I have a duty, and I feel pressure to increase the diversity in medicine. We need more Black doctors. I think patients need to be treated by physicians who look like them, who talk like them. There's multiple studies out there that show that African Americans are less likely to receive knee replacements or heart transplants. So representation, and especially in these day and times, it's extremely important. And that's kind of one of my goals and missions, is to inspire kind of young kids, minorities, to go into medicine.
And did you ever have any reservations going into medical school, being that we know what the statistics are as far as, Black people in medical school, and now a Black man in medical school? Did you ever have reservations about, am I going to be accepted into, with other surgeons, or into the medical field, or into medical school? Am I going to fit in? Did you have any of those reservations?
Yeah, I mean, it was a culture change. Coming from Shreveport, especially when I look back and I was like, man, I was wearing that big shirt or those baggy pants. And then going to Georgetown, where it's, preppy Jesuit school, that was a little culture change for me. And I quickly had to change some of the stuff that I was doing. I think anyone kind of would feel that way, kind of going along this path where you're usually the only person that looks like you in a group of 100 people or 200 people. So, I mean, this is what it is in medicine, and hopefully I can try to change that.
And do you think that's on the upward swing, that you're, even after, you finished medical school and now you're doing your residency, do you see that there's more African Americans going into medicine in STEM, or what do you see that's kind of still at a stalemate?
Yeah, there's actually a study that came out maybe a couple years ago. It said that there were more Black male medical students in the 1970s in medical school than there are now. So I think that was like 2015. So we got a long way to go. But that was a really interesting study that came out and kind of went big all over the press. But in 1970, there were more Black males than there are now in medical school.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're one of them, and that you are leading the charge, and hopefully someone can hear your story, read about you, so that they can be inspired. I mean, I'm inspired by you. I'm just like, man, I'm not doing enough. Antonio's in medical school now.
You're doing a lot. I'm trying to get on your level.
No, man, we all have our path, and I'm just so proud of you for what you're doing, and even more so now to hear your story. When we're in the hustle and bustle in the military, and we are at war, and we're there taking care of patients, we don't get to have these little sit down conversations to see our similarities. And so to me, I'm learning something else about Antonio that I never knew, and I appreciate you disclosing those things.
Yeah, I mean, you never know who you may inspire. You may just have a passing conversation or saying hello to someone, and it may change their life. Like you and the other nurses that I worked with, you guys kind of took me under your wings and taught me what I wanted to know and what you wanted to teach me, and it just kind of propelled from there. But thank you for all your kind of advice and kind of mentorship when I was going through those years. So.
I mean, you were a joy. I mean, we had a good time. We made it light and fluffy because of the situation and the injuries that we saw. But I always remembered how inquisitive you were. And I mean, you was right there like, get off me, man. Let me do my job. You're like a little gnat. But I understand why, because it got you here. And you evolved during those 4 to 5 months, and got comfortable in your skill set to where, I mean, by the time you left, we was like, that kid can be an LVN. He can be an RN like us, because you wanted to learn, and you were so willing to learn. And it was just not from us. You were in the doctor's rounds. You was at the doctor's table, always wanting to hear what they had to say, just to increase your knowledge. And everybody saw it. And so we're not surprised that you're here. Is the bottom line. We're not surprised that you're here. So
curiosity is still there. I'm still that same way.
Well, I'm glad to know that. So tell us, you actually have other desires outside of, just being an orthopedic surgeon. What are you wanting to do after completing your residency? Are you looking to have your own practice, and where is it going to be? What are you going to do?
So I am in private practice here in San Antonio, Texas, focused mostly on spine surgery, but I do some general orthopedics as well. And then hopefully try to do some more when this COVID kind of situation all pans down, and try to do some more international work. I love traveling to, perform surgery and, just giving back kind of not only here in the U.S., but also internationally.
And you know what? I know that you're in orthopedic surgery, and I go overseas as well to Africa. Maybe there's room for you and I to collaborate on a trip over there and do some good work.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, absolutely.
That would be cool. I have a trip to Congo planned in 21. So that's going to be pretty sweet to see how that pans out. But I'll keep you posted about that. So before we wrap up the show, I want to talk about what are some encouraging messages that you would want to give, not just to the young kids, because you talk to them a lot, but to your fellow veterans that's watching this show, who sat here for the last 45 minutes and like, man, Antonio did it, but I just have something in me that I'm just not like Antonio. I can't do all that. What message would you give to that veteran that's watching you right now?
Yeah, number one, I would say thank you for your service. Number two, I would say make sure you understand what you are entitled to in terms of benefits, in terms of other educational benefits, health benefits, like what you're entitled to, so that you're aware. A lot of veterans don't know that certain things that they have access to, counselors, or they need therapy or things like that. I would say make sure that you understand those things. Secondly, I would probably say to just follow your dreams. Use both of us as inspiration to that. We got out the military and both kind of following our dreams. And if we can do it, you guys can also. So that's what I would probably say.
And of course, Who's at the Table was created, should I say, for women veterans, for us to have a voice, for us to have a table where we can talk about our stories and talk about them freely and not judged, and be open and know that we're heard. What message would you give to the women veterans who are watching the show right now?
Probably some of the same things. Follow your dreams. Don't be afraid to speak up. There's a lot of things that go brush under the table, in the military. And unfortunately, women may be kind of on the downside of that, end of receiving that. So don't be afraid to speak up, speak your mind, follow your dreams, whatever position, rank, opportunity that you want to achieve in the military, it's definitely possible. So follow your dreams.
Awesome. So we're going to go into the rapid fire section of the interview. Again, this would probably be nothing for you. You when you TED talking, you up on radio shows, TV shows, so this is going to be nothing for you. But it does give some people a little some anxiety, but I'm sure you're going to do well. So here we go.
How much time do I have to answer?
Yeah. Just off the cuff, Antonio, off the cuff. I don't need you to give me no long spelled out answer now, because you have several you have to answer, okay? Okay. Life is
a blessing.
Okay. My family is
supportive.
And we didn't get to talk about your family, so tell the viewers who you're speaking about when you're talking about your family.
Yeah, so whenever I talk about kind of the path to medicine, it's extremely important to have a supportive kind of a really good support system. From my wife to my dad, who's always been there for me, my aunts, uncles, who have really kind of cheered me on along this process. And I think it's important to have a really good support system. So my family's been very supportive along this journey.
And I think it's important to note that while Antonio was going through medical school and all this other stuff, he did get married and he did have a baby through all of this.
Yep.
So, and those were things you always wanted, right? So he was like, why wait? Even though my plate is full, I will continue to add more to my plate.
Yeah, there's never that's not a good time to start a family. And just start it whenever is best for you and your family. So that, I think that's, there's really no perfect time to have kids and get married and those things, but they can happen.
Yeah, the right one came at the right time.
Yep.
I will say that. Okay, so waking up every day, you pray that
I can be an inspiration to someone who looks like me.
wow. Inspiration to you is?
Inspiration to me is, wow, that's a good one. Inspiration to me is seeing someone who has heard something about me or read my story or read my book and has really taken that to heart and say it's changed their life. That really inspires me.
My biggest motivation is?
My biggest motivation is, I guess, my family. Yeah, my little ones.
And your biggest motivator is?
My biggest motivator is, I'll probably say, myself.
Wow. No one's ever said themselves. Why do you say you're your own your motivator?
I would probably say just because there's good anything that you want to do kind of in life, open up your own business or pay off your student loans or whatever it is. There's going to be no one else out there that's going to kind of believe in your goals than you believe in your goals yourself. So me, I've always have been a very self-motivated person, and just to kind of always confirming my thoughts and, hey, this is what I want to do, writing them out and making sure that all my goals come into fruition. So I think I'm my biggest critic, but I'm also my biggest motivator.
Oh, that's beautiful. And your last rapid fire is rejection taught me
to critically analyze that rejection or even any failure and to utilize that information so that you can better yourself in the future. So one of my professors in medical school, he stated that failure is not in the falling down, it's in the failure to get back up and try again. So at each point in my life and kind of journey, obstacle bump along this way, I have tried to ask myself, what can I take away from this opportunity situation to better myself in the future? What could I have done differently? And that's what I try to do. If I have a bad day in surgery or if I have a bad day, in seeing patients or just at home, I always try to say, hey, sit down and what can I take away from this to make myself a better person? So
you use it as a learning experience for you.
Absolutely. That's how successful people become successful. Michael Jordan was rejected from or was dropped from his high school basketball team. If he would have went and never played basketball again, that we wouldn't have the same basketball that we have today. So other people have failed over and over again, and that's how you become successful. You fail and you learn, like, why did that fail and what can I do to improve? So
okay, because it's you, Antonio, I got to give you another one. 2 things that I would change in my life are?
I would say, my wife gives me a hard time about this also, living in the present time, just taking it all in. I'm a very busy person. I'm always trying to do this. I would say just live in the moment and enjoy kind of like when we go on vacation or when we're doing things together. I have a hard time thinking about, hey, what should I be doing next? And that's what the military, I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead, and that's what you have to do in surgery.
So
yeah. Yeah, so that's one, living in the moment. And I would say, I would probably say I'm probably over perfectionist. That can be a bad thing at times.
Yeah. But sometimes you got to be, when you're orthopedic surgeon, I want you to hit the right nerve. I want you to, I want you to make sure you're correcting the right knee. So I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here today, Antonio. I know you're busy. And again, you are just making us all proud out here. I want people to know more about you. So please tell them, where can they find you? Where is the book? You know, where's your next speaking engagement? What's the next thing you're doing? Where can they find you on social media? Give them everything so they can continue to follow you.
Yeah, all my social media sites are the same. Antonio Webb MD, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and then my website is AntonioWebbMD.com. And then the book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million. Just type in Overcoming the Odds or Antonio Webb, and then my practice information is all on those sites as well.
Is there another book in the future?
Yes, there's another one. It's just slow to in the development. I'm just got a lot of other things on my plate just starting practice. So yeah, there's another one coming.
Well, I wish you all the best. I know the best is yet to come from you. I would continue to follow you. Hopefully in another year or so, we'll do a recap and see where you're at then. But again, thank you so much. The best of luck to you. The best of luck to your wife and your son and your practice, everything that you're doing. And I appreciate so much that, you know, we got to just talk today. I mean, it shouldn't have taken us this long to catch up. But I feel like we've caught up over the past 10 years that we've been out doing our own thing, and I appreciate it. So thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you all viewers for being here today and watching us and hearing Antonio Webb's story of triumph, courage, persistence, tenacity. I mean, he is such a motivator. And so thanks again for tuning in to Who's at the Table. Antonio, thanks again. Have a blessed one, everybody. Be safe. Bye, Antonio. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.